we existed here peacefully, abundantly, joyfully. And that's what was going on prior to 1492.
Imagine North America before Columbus. Who lived here? What did they do? What was Native America like?
As the glaciers receded, from the archaeological evidence, the Indians were here almost immediately. And we have some marvelous archaeological finds that back this up. The tribes, their stories, their legends, their creations, they go back in recorded time for millennia.
There were societies, there were civilizations, there was commerce, there was trade, there was conflict, there was spirituality, there was a living, thriving, beautiful culture on the part of all the original peoples of this part of the world prior to 1492.
You look at Native American sort of social structure, and you look at the sort of balance between men and women. Women being the planters, the cultivators, the processors, the harvesters of all manner of foods that were abundant either in the forests of the Northeast or that were cultivated in large gardens. And you look at men as being the hunters who would leave the villages, go out and trap and hunt animals, and then bring them back to the villages for processing. It was the women that really held the nuclear family together. It was the men that sort of went out and went away. And there was a sort of balance of labor that persisted in most Native American cultures for many, many centuries, thousands of years, really. And it was a balance that kept, I think, things pretty much in harmony.
Eventually, Europeans came to North America, but why did they come? And what were they looking for?
According to tradition, it was Basque fishermen who were exploiting the first great resource that was really harvested in North America, fish, that found their way up the St. Lawrence River.
Strange men in odd-looking vessels brought things to Native Americans they had never seen before.
And you think about the tool that the fisherman uses the most beyond nets and fishing equipment per se, and it's knives. And at some magical moment in the 1520s, 1530s, Native Americans clad in blankets made of beaver skins encountered these Basque fishermen who were altogether willing to trade their knives or to give their knives as gifts in exchange for like castor, these wonderfully processed beaver furs that these Native Americans were wearing.
Native Americans were beginning to see many new people along their shores. While some of these visitors were looking for fish, others, like French explorer Jean Nicolet, were looking for something also very valuable, a trade route to China.
They weren't quite certain where they were. In the beginning, they thought they were near China, because no one really knew how big the continent was. The first Frenchmen here, they brought letters written in Chinese, so they could be introduced to the Khan, or whoever it would be. I often wondered what the Winnebagos thought about that on their way home. Maybe some little girl said, "Daddy, where do those people think they're from?" And he said, "Well, I don't know where they're from. They think they're in China."
Explorers never found a trade route to China through North America. Instead, they found a land rich in resources and a people anxious to welcome them.
The French, upon arriving here, saw a people, saw a rich, friendly, hospitable people, and became friends and allies.
French priest Jacques Marquette and his explorer friend Louis Joliet were early French explorers who helped open the interior of North America to other Europeans. They traveled down the St. Lawrence River, through the Great Lakes, to the Fox River in Green Bay. From there, they found the Wisconsin River, which eventually emptied into the Mississippi. Marquette described the journey as being alone in an unknown country. The maps and journals of Marquette and Joliet allowed other Frenchmen to explore the middle of North America. It became a trade route that lasted for 2 centuries. It became a way to deliver beaver pelts so the French people could enjoy the fashion of the day, hats.
They were large hats, and they required a great deal of felt, and the felt in turn required a lot of beaver fur. And by 1490, essentially every beaver in Europe had been trapped out, with the rare exception of a few in remote places like northern Russia and Sweden and so forth. So at the very dawning of this sort of European migration out into the world, which was largely driven by a search for natural resources, was this desire for furs.
At first, the fur trade was a good deal for both sides. Native Americans traded furs with European visitors for goods and supplies.
To the Indians, that was a good deal. Hey, they really enjoyed that because you get steel needles, you get hatchets, you get cloth.
And our people gravitated towards those things. I mean, it's easier to cook moose meat in an iron pot than it is in a birchbark one, eh? You know, it cooks quicker and cooks a lot better.
You get the finest Brazilian tobacco. You get the finest beads from Murano, Italy.
Are we going to continue to use our stone axes against adopting to the use of the axe? Those answers are simple.
Native Americans also introduced Europeans to new things. Foods like the potato, tomato, and corn. New medicines and painkillers, many forms of which we still use today. The fur trade not only brought new things to Native Americans and Europeans, it brought change. Changes in how people lived, where they lived, and how they conducted business.
The trade was never a cash and carry sort of business relationship. It was always a credit relationship. The Native Americans needed goods, especially in the late summer and the early fall, that they did not have the means to pay for. They needed traps, they needed blankets, they needed gun parts, they needed ammunition, they needed food, they needed other amenities for daily life. And there are no furs in August, September, October. So goods would be exchanged, goods would be extended from the trading houses, from the trading establishments throughout the non-fur months, if you will, in the expectation that they would be paid for when furs became prime and when they were trapped in the cold winter months. And this was the essential character of the trade.
Instead of seeing the first European visitors as people who wanted to settle in North America, the Native Americans saw Europeans as nothing more than a group of traders.
Now when you look at European-made goods as being the element which establishes prestige or wealth, and that the means to achieve these is through hunting and trapping, we start to have changes in the fundamental fabric of Native American family life and cultural life in general. Now the decisions on what we will do next and where we will go and where we will move are based on the most expedient means to more peltries.
The beavers and other fur-bearing animals that fueled the fur trade were being taken faster than they could reproduce. This forced Native American trappers to move into new hunting grounds to look for animals for the fur trade. This created conflict between the Native Americans who traded with the Europeans and those who hunted the animals for their own use, including food and clothing. Animals were also part of Native American spirituality, and the fur trade affected this as well.
The animals were actually the livelihood of the people. They were the spirits. They were the full existence of a lot of people. And a person that related, for instance, to the bear was very disturbed that all the bears were depleting.
The loss of bears and beavers to the fur trade also affected the environment. As beavers disappeared, the ecology changed.
The creeks and the streams were drying up because beaver dams were no longer there to support the grass and the meadows.
As the furs depleted in the east, the fur trade moved west, and so did many Native Americans.
What occurs is a sort of domino effect of pressure from the East Coast, pushing Native Americans into the West.
As well as bringing a new source of wealth to Native America, fur traders brought something they didn't know they carried. Smallpox, whooping cough, and measles devastated native populations. Fur traders carried malaria along North American river routes. These parasitic diseases annihilated native populations. In some outbreaks, entire native communities perished.
And these had devastating effects on the tribes here because we had no tolerance. And we were wiped out by the thousands. They're extinct. They vanished.
Disease devastated Native American people. As time went on, Native people realized the Europeans invading their lands were not just a group of traders. Now they realized they wanted their land. And what was, at first, friendly and mutually beneficial contact between Native Americans and Europeans would become a series of conflicts over Native America. True or false? Before 1492, there were organized societies in North America. True or false? Before 1492, Native American women did most of the hunting. True or false? Europeans first came to North America looking for gold. True or false? First contact between Native Americans and French traders was friendly. True or false? Europeans were attracted to North America because of the rich harvest of beaver pelts. True or false? Native Americans saw early Europeans as nothing more than a group of traders. True or false? As the fur trade moved west in North America, Native Americans stayed in the eastern part of the country. True or false? The fur trade did little to change the environment of North America. True or false? Native Americans were immune to diseases carried by Europeans. True or false? Native Americans and Europeans were both affected by the fur trade.